Alright folks, welcome back to the Rare Bear build. Just got done with the repairs on the shoddy shipping and receiving stuff, and still got a little bit of that later on when we actually do our finish on this plane. Something I normally don't have to do. But in this case, let's go ahead and dive right in. So we've got our bind plug plugged into this, and we're going to go ahead and get our radio prepared. We've already got that set up in the last video. And so we got the bind plug inserted. We're going to be ready to press this while powering it on. You can also go into the menu structure and do it on a Spectrum DX18 in this case. So this says THR3. I'm not sure why everybody tries to guess what channel it's going to be. I'm not 100% sure which pin is signal. Let's see if it'll tell us. Usually it's molded in somewhere. Okay, so I can see all these pins are actually separate, and then there's one line that goes up and over. So my guess is there's a bus for the power and a bus for the ground. So I have to assume the signal is the top one. So I'm going to go ahead and put the white wire up. And if it's wrong, then just everything will blow up in a million pieces. Just kidding, guys. Won't be like that. Okay, so we'll just use one of my little test packs here, 3S. And what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just lay this off to the side more or less. Make sure the polarity's right. I always double check that stuff at this point. Plug it in. You can see it's flashing like crazy. Bind plug's on. Our bind switch is pressed. Binding. DSMX 22 milliseconds. Okay, so it's getting really excited now. So I don't know if that means that the ESC is pissed off at me or if there's something else going on. Throttle cuts off. Okay, I'm going to unplug that. Throttle cuts back on. Throttle sticks down. I tend to think that maybe this design is for a 2S configuration rather than a 3S, given the nature of that response. And I just so happen to have a 3S pack that gives out a 2S voltage level because it's crappy. Throttle sticks down, throttle cuts on. Okay? Safety. That's why I'm checking that, guys. So plug it in. Oh! Got to take out the bind plug, guys. That might have been what was going on too. Okay, shutting that off. Turn it back on. Wait for the signal to come up. That means that the RF is working. That is a very interesting response. Okay, so throttle cut is off. See this? Nothing. I'm going to go to servo setup, travel, reverse. Watch this. Yes, I'm sure I want to confirm it. Got it. Throttle cuts on. Unplugged. We're going to try this again. Okay. You notice it's not freaking out this time, right? It's because it's taking us into the setup menu. I'm holding this up. Okay, throttle cuts on. Scrolling over to my menu. Throttle's down. Okay. Powered off. Power it back on. There we go. Okay, so it just armed. So I had to bring my throttle way down to get the thing to arm. Throttle cuts off. Okay, don't hold this against this plane. Sometimes you got to do that. This is a 2S-like output. It's actually a 3S pack, but it's crappy. So we'll just do this again. We'll just put a pack on that's proper. And now we know we have to trim down kind of in a weird way. Okay, throttle cuts on. I'm going to go to servo setup. We can see that with throttle cut engaged, we're at -116, okay? So I need to retrain the ESC, the home position, or the throttle range, rather. Throttle cuts on. I'm going to go back to throttle cut. I'm going to change this to -100. Okay. Throttle trim is set to 0. Okay. Throttle cut is on. Back to the monitor mode. We're at -100. Okay, so we're good there. So now I'm going to retrain the throttle position by bringing the throttle stick all the way up. Throttle cut is off. Watch this, guys. Plugging in with the throttle fully up. We're going to reteach it the home position or the throttle range. Okay, so now when we're at -98 or 100, okay, throttle cut. Throttle cuts on and tested. Okay, good. So I don't know if you guys caught all that. I'm hoping you did. I'm going to go over it one last time and I'll do it really quick. Sometimes the range by which an ESC operates is not the same as the range that you expect your pulse width modulation that comes out of your radio system to respond to that ESC. In this case, I've had this happen on this plane. I had it happen on my Arcus. Where's my Arcus M? I've had it happen on Esteban. I think he has the P47. We had it, or no, the Pulse 15. We had issues with that as well, which is an E-flite product. So you would think you wouldn't have that, but we did have that on there too. So just to let you know, that is something you have to be prepared to deal with occasionally. The way it works is with this unplugged, throttle cut is off. You'll go ahead and full throttle. Then you engage your power, and it's going to give you some sort of a chirp or a chime, at which point you immediately bring the stick down and be prepared to protect from the prop. You can take the prop off if you're in any doubt. That's the order of operations to retrain the ESC in most cases. You can also hook these up through a flight controller, and you can do programming like an open flight and things like that. That's a huge amount of work for what we just did there in 3 seconds. So anyway, now we know what was going on too. Okay, so the stock way to set this up, this is the elevator. They're saying channel 2. I don't know, whatever channel it is on your radio system. In my case, the orange is going to go up. That's our timer from our 1 out. Okay, so they're saying elevator is channel 2. It's not in this plane or in this Redcon receiver. And then we're looking at ailerons that have been wired together, which is correct. So the stock configuration, you would just go ahead and plug that into ailerons. In this case, it's channel 2 on this Redcon receiver. They're recommending it at another channel, but I don't know what channel they're recommending. Okay, throttle cut is on. Check that the stick is down, and we'll go ahead and plug this in. We'll show you the response. Okay, so this obviously isn't going to go back here at the end of the day. Elevator, which is might be going the right way. Ailerons. Okay. So now in my case, I'm actually going to be separating these and using them as flaperons. So that means one channel will be supported for one aileron and one will be for another. Okay. So this is where I like to figure this out with the new receiver. Okay, so we have one that's working. I don't really care which one's which, and I want to just go through until I figure out the other one. I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be the rudder. It might be gear, so we'll try gear first. So obviously not that. So auxiliary 1 would be my next guess. Okay. So there we go. So it's on auxiliary 1. The other thing you can do is you can move over to monitor mode. You can move the aileron stick, and you can see left aileron, right aileron. Okay, so now let's check flaperons. Yep. And it's just whatever particular direction they go. It's not going to really make a difference to us. So in this case, if you wanted to, you could set these up so that you have the correct label in your software. Okay, so it says right aileron. Okay, so that's the right aileron. Okay, so we had it correct. We just got lucky. It's a 50-50 shot of being correct out of the box. All right, cool. So now that's our basic setup. And now that we have the basic setup, we know that our servos are close to centered, if not exactly centered. There's a little bit of a bump up there and a little bit of a bump down there. I found that occasionally that is the correct direction too. Felt like I was hitting maybe somewhere. I'm not though. So I want to go to flap system, and you see how it's positive 50 and minus 50? I'm going to actually start with minus 100, and then I'll back it off like 5%. And then I'm going to go up to 100 and then back it off like 5. Okay? Just so we don't overdrive the servos unnecessarily. Okay? Okay, so in my case, I actually want neutral setting to be all the way back so it agrees with my normal setup. So I'll actually change this one to minus. And that way we can figure out which one gives us the better response for landing. Because the first flight's going to tell us where we want to, if we want spoilerons or flaperons. Of course, they're going to still act as regular ailerons, whether they're up or down. So up would be spoilerons, down would be flaperons, okay? And I'm actually going to change the time delay to normal so that it's just a fast acting action, since it might respond kind of funny. Now, I can't stress this enough. The value you get on, one of these Horizon products is going to be great in that you have the stock radio setup. This does not tell you stock radio setup. It kind of gives you a quick overview of what to do. But it's not going to tell you the step-by-step, the exact settings. That is really helpful when you're doing a higher quality product. But in this case, I've worked through a lot of the higher quality ones, and some of them are great, and some of them are a little bit off, but you at least have a starting point, okay? So this receiver could tuck down wherever we want, but in our case, we're also going to have that stabilizer. So we do eventually need to work on that, so I'm just going to leave this accessible for the moment. And we need to figure out what type of battery we're ultimately going to do. This will be an extra for us, so we can lay that aside. So in our case, we'll probably come back and do a full setup on this, but for now I think the proper order should be to go ahead and glue things together. So in this case, we've got a really smooth surface here. We'll just see how that fits. Fits fine. We'll just go ahead and unplug this. We've got the radio set up more or less done for the moment, so we can power all that stuff down. Just keep in mind that when you put all this stuff together, you will eventually have to get that canopy to fit. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you make decisions on locations of all your electronics and stuff. They have these nice channels in here, and you can route your cables up there. Well, back there, I should say. And there's nobody saying you need a stabilizer in this plane, except for me. Because you probably will. It's going to be a little bottle rocket is what it's going to be. That's disappointing. It's a little bit deeper, the Redcon receiver, than I was hoping it might be. The Lemon RX receiver would be similarly sized, but maybe a little teeny bit smaller. And when you're talking about a plane of this size, the size will matter for sure. But the position doesn't matter on this. That's one nice thing about that. Okay, so we have this linkage that just kept falling off on me, so I eventually just let it fall off. And there's one hole that's already been opened for us. And this is going to go down and go into the hole that they've opened up, which is obviously this first one here, okay? So now, you may want more deflection. You may find that it's not responsive enough for you at that point, and you can make that decision at a later time. However, in this particular plane, you'll want to be seriously considering that at this juncture, because look how fun that's going to be to adjust. exactly how are you going to do it is my question. So I think maybe on our setup, we may even very reluctantly tape this together until we've established what type of response we get out of it. Tape is actually really strong, by the way, guys. The other thing you can do, you know what, we're just going to throw caution in the wind. I did notice one other thing too. There's heat shrink, which is really bright. Heat shrink here, okay? Not really sure why they decided that it would be appropriate to use heat shrink on a foam plane, but at any rate, probably because it was super cheap and they had it lying around. Okay, so there's your heat shrink. That holds this so it doesn't open, that control clevis adapter thing. Okay, and we'll just try to get this squared up so that when we put everything back together, it looks correct and functions correct. Just a little bit more twist, and that's probably about as good as it's going to get. So we're going to use mucilage. Alright, and the mucilage we can unglue with kicker later, okay? So that's important to note because we are going to more than likely have a possibility of needing to unglue this. But I just can't fathom the idea of this being taped together. That's just not a cool idea in my book. Okay, so we'll just kind of run that up and down the length. And we'll just do a little bit more here. And we'll just be somewhat sparing with how much we put on there, because if we have to unglue this, it's not going to be very fun. I'm going to use a Q-tip. Spread this out. Okay, so once we get that spread, then we can just drop this back into place. And I'm actually going to do a fine-tune adjustment on the elevator until it's square. Okay, because we've already centered the servo. Keeping in mind we can get in here and adjust this, but we won't necessarily be able to adjust that end very easy. Okay, so that's glued in place, and we're just going to let that be. Any excess mucilage here, you'll want to kind of get that out of there at this point. See, I glued a little bit too far back. Sorry guys, I got out of picture there. Okay, so I'm just going through and just peeling that little bit of mucilage out of there. And these decals suck anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and use up whatever amount of mucilage we've got here. See? Might as well. I told you it was junky decals. Plus then I don't have to worry about that mucilage sticking to anything else. Alright, so now that we have that glued, we'll just pay special attention to ensure that it's more or less square, and it is. And then I'm going to actually take a piece of tape, just run-of-the-mill packing tape, nothing special here. I'm actually going to take and stick it to the counter like this. I'm just going to throw a couple of quick pieces of tape to hold things square. This is nice thin tape, but it's actually got good adhesive. Okay, so it's got good adhesive qualities. So we'll see if that works. And then this needs to be glued in here. And then it looks like we will butt up against the tail of the plane here. So we'll go ahead and get that stuff glued up right now. Just running along the edge here because it's open in the center. Then we'll just kind of go for a little bit more surface area here. So we'll run that mucilage around. This stuff is just great glue. I love it. And then we'll just spread it with the tip of the bottle. And then we'll come around here and just swipe around it. Then we'll just kind of do the same thing here. And if you want to activate this glue, the best way to activate it that I found is to actually put it on both surfaces if you really, really want a strong bond. Okay, so I'm actually not going to use the cotton part of the Q-tip on this, except for this area. Okay, so we got that. I'm just using the cardboard portion of the Q-tip there. Okay, so we're going to let that set and cook for a second. And while that's cooking, meaning the glue is activating, I'm going to just work a little bit more in there. Okay, and I can kind of wipe whatever little bit of residue we just got onto the tip right off of there. You want to cap that stuff up when you're done screwing with it, obviously. We'll just come in and spread this glue. Okay, this is going to be a very strong glue. I mean, virtually immediately it's going to be like flyable stuck. And you guys are probably wondering, you know, are you thinking this needs a rudder, Brian? I was actually thinking that. But no, I mean, this plane is not going to need a rudder. It would be cool to have a rudder. I personally would prefer to have a rudder on all planes because I like having that yaw axis control for when I'm doing really high-speed passes and stuff. You can get that finite roll authority. Whereas the ailerons are kind of like an overwhelming roll authority when you're going super fast. If you set up your radio right, you won't have that issue. I do, though. Okay, so you can see that's... I would give it 10 minutes before it's probably flight worthy here. Alright, so the next step, of course, in terms of assembly, that was... I mean, most of the assembly has been fixing the shipping damage, which is annoying. And the rest of the assembly is going to be my modifications to put the stabilizer in. And we'll want to get this so that it's not riding on top of that. And we'll just have to evaluate our choices at a later time. Just going to throw these antenna back here so they stay kind of tucked in. And then we're going to see how there's one magnet. Just going to stick that in there. See, it's supposed to go like this, but then I keep thinking to myself, okay, so you slide it in, and then you slide it forward, and then when you go back, it magnetically holds, okay? So at this point, would be a good idea to go ahead and evaluate whether or not you have a good enough fit there to have security on your canopy. I mean, if you can overlook the little bit of decal issue and this one blemish, which by the way is not going to matter, it's a belly lander, it's gonna get dinged up. It's actually a pretty cool looking little plane. I'm excited to see it fly, and I'm trying to decide what type of battery to use in it. Of course, the manual doesn't mention it. See this little part here? They show the battery up at the front there. I'm assuming it's probably like 1,000-ish, but I'm wondering if this thing will handle a 4S. Okay, so the way that opens is you slide it forward, this tab comes out, and there you go. Let's look at the ESC and see if it says. Okay, there it is. 2 through 4S. And this has a 5 volt at 2 amp BEC. So the battery eliminator circuit is 5 volts at 2 amps. We were pontificating on that earlier. And we came to the conclusion that I guessed that it was 5 volts. But 2 amps is pretty low for having a stabilizer in the equation. So just as an FYI for you, you're not going to want to have to add too many more pieces of equipment on here. The Lemon RX might end up being a better fit for this application. But I think we're going to give this a good college try first. So guys, that's about it. That's all I can handle on this video. I'm going to run out of memory. And so for that reason, I'm going to tell you, check the links below. Buy this thing. I mean, obviously at this point, you might be watching this 2 years after I built it. So you can go through and see the flight performance before you even make a decision if you want to purchase. But I'll tell you what, these little A3Ls, I know they're good. And I am excited to show you how easy it is to integrate this into the performance of that plane is going to be greatly improved. So check the links below. Buy one for yourself. As usual, guys, come back for more. You know where the action is. It's right here on this channel. Thanks a lot for watching, guys.